Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast, the ultimate blueprint to self-love and inner peace. I'm your host, Danielle Van. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, life coach to women, meditation teacher, and author, I've spent my life studying and learning from the stories that make us human. It's my passion and goal to help you shift your mindset and create a lifelong revolution to help you reach your greatest potential. Let me ask you a question. Do you ever feel impatient? We all experience hiccups and inconveniences from time to time, and so often, the minute things don't go quick enough or the way we hoped and desired, impatience seems to be cued. Some of life's biggest moments are largely unavoidable. However, how we deal with them or communicate about them is our responsibility. That's why today, you and I are taking a one-on-one deep dive into impatience, what it is, and how to build the practice of patience into your daily life. Without it, you struggle to be mindfully present in a positive place and to practice gratitude. We're breaking it all down, how to untangle the nasty beast of impatience. So let's dive right in. The Get Your Life Together Girl podcast starts right now. Oh, patience. Or maybe I should sigh and say impatience. I have to be honest with you right here, right now, right at the top of our time together, because me and patience have an interesting, somewhat delicate dance that we've done for quite some time. Okay, that's not even fair. I'm going to be honest with you. Me and impatience have had a strong bond for most of my life. But who hasn't had a relationship with impatience, right? Most of us have. When I got an email from a listener last week begging for a conversation about impatience, I first groaned and then I laughed. This is one place that I can't always say that I have my life together, but my job is to always meet you where you are, not where I am. And so here we are. Over the last few days, I leaned in and began to think about how to best serve this conversation. You know, patience and impatience often comes up in private session, and I do teach it. But again, I try to keep to topics that I actually have it together on. That's okay. We're going to do this together, right? Now, whether our impatience is low level and surrounded around daily tasks like driving through heavy traffic or waiting for someone to get out the door in the morning, or we struggle with needing our goals and projects to create instant magic in our lives, which is more of a mid-level impatience, or we go to the top level of impatience and enter into a power struggle with our life because of our life's perspective, or we have this idea, this big grand idea that the harder we push, the greater the outcome. It's the whole no pain, no gain thing. No matter what your thoughts are about patience or impatience, many of us actually rush through life speaking the language of impatience and frustration without ever even realizing it. So I want to hand over some of these sentences that may feel very familiar to you so that you know you probably deal with impatience a little bit more than you think. So those sound like, why can't you just listen? Why aren't you ever on time? Or we're never on time. Can't you just hurry? This is not happening fast enough. What if this never comes true? Hurry up, let's go. I'm tired of feeling this way. I just want it to be done. I could go on and on, but I bet some of those actually sound pretty familiar. I know I say a couple of those things like hurry up, let's go, when I'm waiting for my son to get out the door to go to baseball. But let's dive into the root of all the things, of all of this, and hopefully change the way that you think about impatience and truly what it is. And let's talk first about what it is, right? Let's think about your definition for just a moment. I'm going to pause. Think about what impatience means to you. Okay, got it? All right, so most of you are probably going to say it's this inability to hold still or to be present in the moment. That's still a high-level definition. Many people will say that the lack of patience is just frustration. But I want you to realize that impatience or the action of impatience really comes down to someone being unwilling to mindfully wait in the present moment or for the future in order for something to unfold. It's that whole can't wait and therefore become very annoyed by the delays or the inconvenience that they experience. It can also mean being eager for something to happen. So I want you to really think about it that way too, that we can actually have a positive twist on our definition. I kind of like to put it like impatience is trying to itch a scratch that you can't reach. That seems to be a very visual thought process for a lot of people. And while the typical thoughts around impatience are, pretty good, I actually want you to realize that it goes so much deeper than that. So much deeper. And that's really what I want to talk about. While we just talked about not being able to wait, that really seems like impatience is a lack of patience itself. And it's not. It's actually more of a response to a trigger. It's a response to a behavior, a circumstance, a person, a thing. It's this thing that is often outside of yourself that creates a sense of no control, of lack. When you feel like you don't have control, what happens? You increase your stress factor and even your anxiety rises because you're trying to find safety in an unstable environment. That environment can be anything from a thought to a physical need to a singular moment. It's really whatever it is that you've attached to that moment. It's here we become hyper-focused on results and we fail to enjoy our lives because we bring ourselves into negative thinking and even a negative feeling frame. I can't tell you how many times so many people have sat in front of me and I tell them, listen, impatience is actually a triggered response. There's this light bulb that goes off and there's this little trimmer of understanding that says, wow, I think that I can hear that in my daily conversation when I say, when is enough enough? That is the ultimate thought process of impatience. The secret of impatience is shifting your focus to the things that are working, not all the things that haven't, won't, can't, should, but aren't. So let's shift through all of that and let me give you some practical ways for you to practice patience in your daily experience so that we are focused on the good things that are possible for us, especially when hard things or big overarching things come about. That way we have a pre-built mindset and a toolbox to walk through those moments and get back into a place where we can actually use what serves us. So the first thing that I want you to know is there are multiple layers to patience. The first is emotional patience. This is the space where you give yourself permission to witness how you feel and then work through the emotions and feelings as needed in real time. That's the most important part, in real time and for as long as needed. That last part is equally as important. If you've convinced yourself that you are impatient by nature, you're going to tend to brush off your feelings, saying that you don't have time for them, or you trick yourself into believing that if you don't feel them, those things can't touch you or they're not real. That's not true. Emotional patience is very necessary to develop. Next is physical patience. This is really the space of knowing where to push and when to hold space. If you're one who keeps going, even though you're exhausted, you lack physical patience. You may live your life through this mindset that by pushing, you're going to create quicker results than you would if you took a time out or you recalibrated yourself or you leaned into rest. Now listen, this is the biggest part of my downfall. This is why I struggle with patience. I'm telling you, I do this. Now, is this a response to a trigger? Yes, it is. It comes back to wanting to prove yourself. It's coming back to wanting to build your purpose. It's somewhat healthy, but also very unhealthy because we don't take care of ourselves physically. The next part is spiritual patience. This is the space of allowing time for growth and understanding to blossom. Growth is a continuing process. Yes, you do have times where growth feels like kind of overnight, right? Where things just suddenly turn around and we see ourselves in a new place. But the truth is, it takes a flow of events and moments and lessons to create growth. It's just that we're catching on to the backside of it. I see this sticky point, as I like to call it, when women begin to heal from their traumas. Suddenly, they get a taste of what life feels like without the heavy weight of all the things they've been carrying for so long, and they want more. I can't blame them, but they want to rush. They want to rush their growth. They want to rush their healing. They're saying, Danielle, give me more tools. Help me jump 50 spaces forward on this game board called life. And I will often have to say, okay, it's time to stop. It's time to pause. It's time to come back down to reality and slow down. It's time to be in growth. Allow your soul to seek inspiration and expression. These are things that we cannot rush. These are things that are so damaged by impatience. This is a lifelong process. The next is our mental patience, which is where we give ourselves enough time to get to know our thoughts, to understand our why, to be intentional, to know the triggers of impatience themselves without trying to barrel through the process. Patience is a subtle skill set. It's a practice of safety, well-being, empowerment, and growth. There's another thing I must say about patience. While impatience is a trigger, patience itself is a positive coping mechanism. We all use it. We all have it. We all have coping mechanisms for everything that we do. I want you to think about it this way. Impatience is the negative trigger which turns into a way to cope, driving you into disappointment, lack, that need to push harder. Patience is the response that is grounded in the knowing that everything is always working out for you, even if it doesn't quite feel like it all the time. You likely know what sets you off, and whatever it is, it honestly doesn't matter to me because the process is still the same. We can untangle from the behavior of impatience while building a patience practice. And that's really where I want to spend the majority of our time together, in that building. And I want you to know that not all of these have to be in place, right? I'm going to hand out some tools. I'm tossing out a menagerie of tactics and practices and thought patterns that may hit a varying range of different places of your patience. Because remember, we're talking about the physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional patience in hopes of creating those life shifts for you. So grab on to what works. Let go of everything else, right? I always say trash the rest. With that, let's break it down. And the first thing that I really want to impress upon you is that impatience always starts in the brain, in the way you are connecting to a thought or a series of thoughts. The series of thoughts are those things that repeat in your head, the story that continues to ruminate. I actually call those stories or those series of thoughts the frequent flyers. They're thoughts that reoccur, and so they fly in, they leave, and they fly right back. In order to build a new frame of thought, we have to bring those flyers to the forefront. What does that mean? It means it's important for you to start to identify your frequent flyer thoughts. Maybe you are in a relationship and you grow frustrated because it takes a person longer to emotionally show up than, say, you do. You begin to ruminate about how the relationship will play out. You think about the past and the other relationships that, didn't feel as good as you wanted them to. You try to force the issue, asking the person to lean in or to, grab them really tightly, and you just grasp and hold on to the point that it creates division. The frequent flyers are the thoughts, the thought of need. It's the external validation and all of the other factors. In order to create patience, you have to get to know those frequent flyers and get them on the table. What thoughts cause you to feel impatient? What are they tied to? That's step one. Just like the negative thought process exercise that you've probably heard me talk about in other episodes, to root down, I want you to spend, say, 7 days writing out the thoughts that are tied to your impatience. I get impatient when I feel like I have to rush, or I get impatient when others do not respond to my request quickly enough, or I get impatient when things don't go my way. After you spend a set amount of time doing this, then I want you to go to the next level. And that next level is to question the thought. Why? Why do I get impatient when this occurs? Is it because you're trying to control things? Remember that our truest definition of impatience is the lack of control. Is it because you like things in a particular order? Does it come from chaos in your home life as a child, your upbringing? Is it a learned behavior? Was mom always frantic? And that taught you to be impatient. It's important to know because we can't change what we do not understand. We can't change what we cannot accept. And we have to have a willingness to change. The next piece to all of this is to get back to the root of mindfulness and practice present moment awareness. If you aren't thinking in the present moment, you can absolutely open the door to anxiety, which takes your impatience to the next level. So I want you to stop, get mindful. What is in this moment? And what is this moment trying to show me? How does this moment feel within my body? Identify the impatience that's occurring by really tapping in. In order to feel something, we have to be connected to it. That connection always has a physical response, a physical aspect to it. Where you feel physical pain or frustration within the brain is the same space that you process emotions. You have the ability to then identify and assess the physical impatience within your body. Notice what's happening when you start to feel impatient. For some people, their chest gets tight. For others, their hands are clenched, their arms are crossed, maybe it's on their hips. We begin to recognize what's happening physically within the body by paying attention to it. Giving it that attention starts to rapidly untangle or to rapidly accelerate the impatience, frustration, and even the anger momentum. It's really about how you're connecting. I want you to think about it further. If you recognize, hey, I'm frustrated and it's stemming from this place of not being in control, you suddenly empower yourself with a choice. You think, do I have to act? Or should I hold myself in place and use a tool in my toolbox to find center? Let me give you another example. I see this so often in the grocery store, and you probably do too if you live in a more industrialized country. Let's say you enter the grocery store. It's really busy. There's people everywhere, and the thought sneaks in, checking out is going to be a long process. I'm going to have to wait. So what happens? You naturally try to speed up in hopes that you're not inconvenienced. Yet you get to the checkout lane and it is absolutely packed. Annoyance builds. The cashier is taking too long and the person behind you is now too close and the person in front of the cashier is talking and slowing her down. And you find yourself trying to pacify the time by, say, checking your phone, making small talk, looking around, anything to take your mind off of the situation. But it's too late, right? Because impatience has set in. You can feel it in your chest. Your hands may be, again, clenched. And finally, when you get up to the front of the line, you are done. Maybe you think about how irritated you are and you don't actually treat the clerk very well. Can you see how this inner building of negativity then spills into your behavior? How can we then bring the behavior and the physical sensation down? It's what I always talk about, going to your breath. It's taking several deep breaths. There's a reason why deep breathing is regularly recommended by me and so many others, and it's because when you're dealing with a stressful situation, our brains kick into our survival instincts. And we are designed to keep ourselves safe. Remember, that's the brain's number one job. And so we get into a place where we are very dysregulated. Our brains sometimes go to extremes pretty quickly, assuming that the stress The impatience that you're feeling is a threat, and it's extremely urgent. The truth is, most of the time, it's not life or death, right? But our brain doesn't actually know the difference. It doesn't know that there isn't an actual threat until it gets its best indicator. And that indicator is oxygen. When we are in stress or in anxiety associated with impatience, a lot of times we will go into a space of short, quick breaths, really designed to initiate the brain's fight or flight response. If we do this long enough, we actually go into hyperventilation. And let's break it down for just a second, because that doesn't always look like what we see in movies or what we think about when it comes to hyperventilation. If we are breathing really, really quickly, our oxygen levels that are reaching our brain are actually greatly diminished, and we can be in that space of hyperventilation. It doesn't have to be the brown bag or passing out. It's just that we're not getting good quality air to our lungs, to our brain. So taking a few seconds to deeply breathe with control tells the brain and the body, hey, I'm safe. I'm not in danger. I'm just in a moment of stress. I'm okay. We don't have to take our whole body, our immune system, our brain offline because we're not actually in danger. And when we move through impatience with a slower, more controlled response, the body remembers, hey, I'm okay. With the breath, we also want to give our muscles what they need too, which is relaxation. Remember how a few moments ago I said there's a physical reaction happening to us that has triggered us and set us off into impatience? So once the breath is back into a healthier, more regulated state, going through a progressive muscle relaxation is super important. It's very helpful. I'm going to walk you through it now, but I want you to remember that the impact of impatience is both mental, physical, and emotional. And so we want to release it from those three places. So an active, progressive muscle relaxation is actually super easy. Let me go through it with you, and then maybe you mark this place on this particular episode so that you can use it at another time. So start with your toes. If you have shoes on, I want you to curl your toes to the best of your ability and then simply release them. If you're barefooted, it's much easier, but work with your current circumstance. Don't take off your shoes if it's uncomfortable or it's, not right at the moment. Just work with what you have. So once you release your feet, I want you to then move to your calves. Tighten your calf muscle and then release. You can even flex your foot and bring it back into neutral. That does the same thing. And then move to your thighs. Tighten them, squeeze hard, and then release. Move your mind and your thought process to your stomach. And I want you to then pull your belly button back like you're going to bring it to the back of your spine, and then release it with an exhale. Move up to your shoulders, and I really love this one where you can pinch your shoulders up close towards your ears and then slowly and gently roll them back down into a more relaxed state. Next, go to your arms. You can move them in towards your body and out, tightening them, or you could flex your biceps, bring it in tight, and then naturally releasing them. And then move to your hands. You're going to make a fist and then release it back and forth. You can do that a few times until you're ready to move to your jaw. And you're going to open and close your mouth, just releasing any final tension. This exercise really takes about 1 to 2 minutes, depending on how fast or slow you do it. It just really reminds the body and mind that you are one, that you are in control, and that your frustration or impatience simply doesn't have to win. It really is a fantastic release. Now, once you've moved through that, you can let go of any should statements. If you've listened to this podcast over the course of all the time I've been doing it, you probably know by now that I really can't stand that word, should. It's a word of lack. It's a word of impatience. It should be different. It should be this or that. It's not enough, and I have to wait for it to be more. The should have already happened. Remove should, please. Replace it with the truth, with action, with I am. The words I am are positive growth and motion. It's determination. And in that, you have to declare your feelings and the impatience. Give yourself permission to voice what's causing the impatience to begin with, and then allow the negative to turn into a motivator, which is also productivity, right? Voicing your emotions is imperative, and impatience is no different. It's an emotion. By acknowledging, by putting a voice to the way you feel, you empower yourself to recognize your experiences and communicate how they are being impacted and how the emotion is really even creating your behavior, which then, of course, impacts others. And everything we do, we have to acknowledge. So do it. Next, with that acknowledgement, with the release, with knowing where you are, you must push back on the unreasonable mental, emotional, physical, financial, or even spiritual demands, especially the ones you put on yourself. When we are not where we want to be, we tend to believe that we have one or two options: give up or push harder. So we have to look at what kind of demands our impatience are causing within us. You can ask yourself, if I were more patient, what would that look like? Weigh your options because you have to validate your feelings. You see, impatience thrives, and I mean thrives, on disconnection. Disconnection with the self, disconnection with the moment. Patience is about connection. Impatience is about the lack of connection. This is a recipe for disaster. Validation provides acceptance and understanding. Give yourself space to move through some huge questions for validation, and then I want you to pair it with validating statements and then actions. So what does that look and sound like? The first question is this impatience serving me? Is this true? Is how I feel true? Is this coming from a place of positivity or negativity? What do I want to do with the way that I feel right now? Those are the big questions. Once you know the answers, you can shift into the facts of validating statements. That sounds like this impatience is not serving my long-term goal, and I have the power to shift how I feel. Or, I know what I'm feeling isn't the truth, so I'm choosing to release it. Then you ask yourself, how? How do I want to move beyond this moment? When you know, you take action. This small exercise helps to shape your behavior and communication, really, which over time reduces the impatience before it gets bigger and bigger and this beast is really owning you. Now, speaking of action, we want to start to redirect your energy in a healthy way. And when you practice and untangle yourself from the small nuances of your life that cause impatience, you'll get to a place where you feel impatience creeping in, and you'll be able to start to empower yourself before it becomes a massive movement. You will also likely begin to see that impatience is more about your need for change with your expectations than anything else. What is an expectation? It's a formula of how you think something should go, what you expect to happen. Expectations really have a way of getting the best of us. Remember, we assume that others are always anticipating our needs, but they're not. Not usually anyway. So start looking at, have I spoken my needs? Have I given my expectations? Have I given a clear understanding of what's happening within my thought process, my emotional body, my physical needs? If I haven't, impatience is what's getting the best of me because I chose not to handle the situation the way that I needed it to unfold. That in and of itself is a very powerful understanding. But if you're struggling with any of these things or putting them into action seems really difficult and you need something so baseline that it is easy to do right now, right here. I want you to find a distraction. I want you to do something that helps you get out of the impatience pretty immediately. So busy yourself. Is this different than avoiding your feelings? The answer is yes. This is allowing yourself a break. It's saying, I don't need to figure out every single thing in this moment, so I'm going to step back. In doing so, you can go for a walk. You can play a game on your phone. You can walk away from the moment. Whatever distracts the mind allows you to calm the body. And if you can get there, do it. The last thing that you can do that can truly help you get into a place of acceptance and considering the entire situation, I like to call them global situations, and that really just means looking at the bigger picture. And so I want you to realize that if you're feeling impatient, dwelling on those feelings is not going to be productive. It's not going to be helpful. It's not going to be pleasant. You already know this, but that doesn't stop us from doing it, right? So I want you to accept what's happening and where you are. If you can do that, it changes the dialogue and the story that you're telling yourself. Can you accept that things are not exactly the way you want them? If you can then give yourself emotional and mental leverage to find a new path, a new way to find a solution. And I want you to offer yourself a different perspective. Think to the end result. Is this going to serve me long term? Is my impatience going to matter in 10 minutes? Is my impatience going to take me outside of meeting my own needs? What do I want? What do I need? How am I going to get there? Impatience is a very interesting thing. In so many ways, it can own us. And yet we just need to realize that it's all about triggers and it's all about the way that we are connecting. Patience really is a necessary factor for our self-love and personal growth. We have to have it for inner peace. And really what I hope that you've taken away from this conversation is a few little nuggets. That impatience is all about triggers and the way you connect. That you have the power to shift any feeling that you have, and there are simple tools available to you. There's the free tool of your breath. There's the muscle relaxation. There's the questions and chunking down the moment. It's about moving out of this space. When you feel the power to shift any feeling, you realize that you can face anything in your day-to-day life. And if I slow down just enough, then I know that I can see every situation from a different side. And when I do that, I realize that I have the power to change any emotion, any thought, any physical response, any financial processing, and most certainly my spiritual connection, which means that I don't have to be impatient because I'm triggered. It means I can be patient because I've learned to pause. Your job is to be mindful in the moment and create what you want from a grounded place. You just have to move out of impatience to do it. We're all impatient, just like I said, but is it more about the trigger or is it because you won't pause? When you learn to pause, when you learn that patience will always get you further than impatience, you learn how to essentially move into what you need, want, and desire. And learning that is an essential step into getting your life together, girl. Thank you so much for listening to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. If you've enjoyed these tips to bettering your life and are seeking daily inspiration and additional tools and tips, please follow me on social media at Get Your Life Together Girl on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and now Clapper. You can also visit the show notes, my blog, and the Women's Circle on my website, getyourlifetogethergirl.com. Please feel free to share this episode with a friend or family member as it helps spread this message to those who may need it. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others.